Welcome to Once Upon a Coin, documenting the ongoing history of blockchain and cryptocurrency. And as always, I'm your storyteller, Jason Cassidy. Today's story has us continuing our journey through the historical timeline of crypto year by year. And now, we've finally reached the point where crypto went mainstream and the word was pretty much ubiquitous with people all across the planet. By now, Bitcoin had become a global sensation with mass appeal, be it from the massive army of retail buyers or from the now charmed cohort of institutional players who felt the asset was now valuable enough to have a place in their billion-dollar portfolios. The industry was still in hangover mode from a ridiculous 2021, but there were signs that cryptocurrency as an investment class was entering into a new epoch, one that would see it make an appearance in some of the most unlikely of places. This is the story of crypto in 2023.
Sun cast a shadow, a digital line is coming over the mountain and over your mind. Double down your Bitcoin, hang on for the ride. We're moving into the future, one block at a time. We're moving into the future, one block at a time.
Bitcoin was the main focus for most people coming into this year, as generally speaking, when Bitcoin makes a move in another direction, the rest of the industry follows suit. In January, the price recovered from its 2022 lows and was able to climb all the way up into the $20,000 area. The real elephant in the room, though, was the FTX disaster that was still fresh in the minds of crypto traders and investors alike. The fallout from this debacle would play out through the year and have lingering effects for a long time to follow. To truly move past the damage inflicted from all these blowups a year prior, something really big would need to happen for the industry. FTX, Terra, and Three Arrows Capital were all major players in the industry just a short while ago, and their demise had left a permanent scar on the blockchain landscape. Fortunately, crypto got exactly what it needed right now: hope. On January 20th, developer Casey Rodamore released the Ordinals protocol on Bitcoin. This was pretty big news, as it now meant that there was a functional way for people to create NFTs or non-fungible tokens on the Bitcoin blockchain. Up until now, people related NFTs to smart contract-based blockchains like Ethereum and Solana. But what most people do not know is that Bitcoin actually came out of the box with the ability to do smart contracts itself. It may have been a bit late to the party, but Ordinals did end up opening the door to a tidal wave of innovation on Bitcoin, which helped spur the recovery of the industry. Ordinals function a little bit differently than NFTs on other chains, but the end result is the same: some really cool digital assets. You can attach or inscribe, as they call it on Bitcoin, data in the form of images or videos to a Satoshi. And a Satoshi is the smallest unit of account within Bitcoin. If this is confusing, think about the US dollar. The smallest unit of account within the US dollar is a penny. With Bitcoin, that is a Satoshi. Now, as seemingly with everything that happens on Bitcoin, the advent of NFTs or ordinals on-chain became quite controversial. One camp felt that JPEG showing up on the Bitcoin blockchain was basically just a form of spam, taking up valuable block space that would be otherwise used for Bitcoin's main purpose: moving around money. And the other camp, being pro-ordinals, felt that they were doing everyone a favor and should be happy that there was some real innovation finally happening on Bitcoin. This meant more fees for the miners, seeing hundreds of new use cases showing up in the form of transactions competing for that very limited and precious block space. Ordinals to this day are still a very touchy subject within Bitcoin, but regardless, the one thing that cannot be argued is the financial impact they've had. They've drawn in a completely new audience who have been waiting to put their creative prowess to work on the biggest blockchain in the world. Whether it's Bitmap or Bitcoin Frogs, a lot of projects exist today due to the Ordinals protocol. In February, the SEC, or Securities and Exchange Commission, was at it again, and this time their target was the US-based exchange, Kraken. A settlement was eventually reached over charges against Kraken, claiming that they had engaged in the unregistered offering and sale of crypto via their staking as a service program. Kraken eventually paid $30 million to keep themselves out of the SEC's regulatory naughty chair. Bitcoin saw even more innovation happening on its base chain after seemingly a lifetime of nothingness, while the rest of the industry innovated with things like DeFi, stablecoins, and the metaverse. In March, an anonymous developer going by the name of Domo created the BRC20 standard. And the BRC20 standard functions much like Ethereum's ERC20 standard in that it allows you to create fungible tokens. BRC20 is a type of experimental token standard that takes advantage of the Ordinals protocol to allow users to mint, deploy, and transfer fungible tokens on-chain. And now, within the span of just a few short months, Bitcoin had undergone an incredible transformation. It had gone from a place where you could merely hodl your coins to a place where you could mint, buy and sell NFTs and altcoins. That precious block space was becoming a bigger and bigger point of contention within the Bitcoin community. And in the years that followed, as the stakes got higher, so too did people's convictions, basically digging in their heels into one camp or the other. Now, where have we heard this before? People on Bitcoin going through a level of infighting that could eventually lead to a contentious hard fork. Eesh. March also saw some misery unfold in the traditional financial markets that spilled over into crypto. Many US-based regional banks went under during this time, including Silicon Valley Bank and Silvergate Bank. Both served the crypto community in many ways, and their sudden bank run and collapse ended up impacting the blockchain markets like you couldn't believe. And perhaps the most affected of all crypto companies by this was Circle, the issuer of USDC, the US dollar stablecoin. Circle had been holding $3.3 billion of its capital with Silicon Valley Bank. News that spooked the entire industry when it learned about its ties to the failed institution. USDC subsequently lost its $1 US peg, dropping all the way down to 88 cents US before eventually recovering. If you were holding USDC when this went down, then you had a really difficult decision to make. Because historically, once a peg breaks like this and falls down that far, it usually doesn't recover, with Terra's stablecoin collapsing a year prior as a prime example. The right decision here turned out to be to hold and pray. But as we're going to learn in future episodes, sometimes praying alone is not enough. By the time April came around, there was a new entrant into the crypto space ready to make their presence felt. Well, maybe not a new entrant per se. You'll see what I mean here. On April 14th, Pepe, the OG crypto meme and NFT series, got its own fungible token on the Ethereum blockchain, and it started off at a value that was just microfractions of 1 US penny. This, of course, was a meme coin, because as we all know, Pepe was already a well-established meme. And Pepe got his start on Bitcoin all the way back in September of 2016, when the first rare Pepe NFTs were mined in block 428,919. But by now, Pepe had grown to exist on other top blockchains like Ethereum. And of course, if you're on Ethereum, that usually means eventually you're going to be getting a meme coin. Usually this will be a non-event because frankly, there are tens of thousands of meme coins on Ethereum that usually go nowhere, trying to catch lightning in a bottle. Well, in this case, Pepe was ready to bring both the thunder and the lightning. Within just a few weeks, Pepe had gone absolutely viral, hitting a market cap of $1 billion US. And this meant that even a small amount of money invested into the joke coin was now yielding a very nice return. This was the case for one crypto trader who bought trillions of Pepe after it was released in April for a total of $263 US. By early May, they were now sitting on over $10 million US worth of Pepe. And this meant that the joke was now officially on everyone else that had faded this investment opportunity when it came out. While the month of May was dominated by Pepe and the mini meme coin season that it had spurred, an equally large force was being directed back towards Bitcoin. In June, it had managed to climb all the way up to $30,000 US per coin, basically doubling in value relative to the bottom that was established a year prior in 2022. June also saw some major institutional news come out, and this time it was all about the king of crypto. Bitcoin was going to be getting its own ETF, or exchange-traded fund. And in the United States of all places, which was considered the gold standard of locales for an investment vehicle like this. And who was filing for this ETF, you ask? Well, the megacorps of all megacorps, BlackRock. They wanted to bring the first US-based Bitcoin ETF to the masses, and they wanted to do it as soon as that year. Other big names got in line and also filed their intent to launch a Bitcoin ETF, including Franklin Templeton, Fidelity, and Grayscale. There was a lot of money about to flow into Bitcoin. Money that certainly wouldn't speculate on Bitcoin until it had hit a certain price point and level of acceptance. And that moment had finally come. And speaking of Grayscale, they won an August appeal against the SEC. And how did they win? Well, it was deemed that the regulatory agency was arbitrary and capricious in the rejection of Grayscale's request to convert their Bitcoin trust into an ETF. The trend of major institutional players making noise continued throughout the rest of the year. MicroStrategy, perhaps the biggest perma-bull of all when it comes to Bitcoin, acquired large amounts of the coin during this time. This was revealed in their Q4 2023 presentation when they disclosed they had purchased 31,755 Bitcoin by the end of Q3. And to give a bit more context, they paid $39,411 per coin. These guys are going all in. September played host to Asia's premier crypto conference called Token 2049, which took place in Singapore from the 13th to the 14th. Singapore had always been looked at as a crypto hub, but holding premier events like this really helped cement that reputation. In October, the industry got some more good news while the SEC racked up another loss in what was a really bad year for them. The SEC finally decided to drop their lawsuit against the Ripple CEO and their executive chairman, and while this meant that both men could finally breathe a sigh of relief, it didn't mean that Ripple or XRP was out of the woods just yet. The SEC wasn't done, and they made it very clear they still intended to pursue a case against Ripple. And this was based on an earlier ruling in July where a judge determined that Ripple had violated federal security laws by selling XRP directly to institutional investors. Despite this, many felt that Ripple had actually dodged a bullet with this summer's ruling. And that's because the judge had also cleared Ripple of any wrongdoing when it came to selling XRP to retail investors. In reality, this was really only a partial victory for Ripple. But by now, the case had been drawn out for so long and had gotten so damn nasty that a lot of people in crypto felt that Ripple was actually fighting for them, and thus representing the entire industry. If the SEC could successfully go after Ripple and win this case, then really, no one was safe. Thus, the news that the SEC had suffered yet another setback was basically viewed as a huge win for all cryptonauts. November was anything but quiet, as with Sam Bankman-Fried or SBF gone, that left only one vocal crypto exchange figurehead left. And that person was Changpeng Zhao of Binance, or CZ as he's better known in the industry. A lot of noise was made on November 21st when CZ pleaded guilty to federal charges, stepping down as the CEO of Binance. He had been criminally charged due to causing a financial institution to violate the Bank Secrecy Act. To avoid a lifetime behind bars, CZ wisely decided to cooperate with the feds. And to no one's surprise, he reached a $4.3 billion settlement with the Department of Justice. Once these guys have you in their crosshairs, there's really not much chance of escape. So CZ probably avoided a lot of misery by taking the deal that was on the table. And if CZ wasn't all that good at singing before, you can bet your ass his vocal cords were getting a good workout now. While no one knows for sure if he was giving up information on his other top crypto luminaries in the space, you can bet your bottom Bitcoin that we'll be digging deep into the subject when we look at the episode about Binance and CZ. As the year of 2023 was coming to a close, Bitcoin made one final push, closing the year off hitting the $42,000 mark. And with the handful of Bitcoin ETFs lined up for approval in 2024, the good news on crypto was flowing like a river. These ETF providers wanted to ensure they marketed the living snot out of their Bitcoin investment vehicles. So, no matter where you looked, news of the coming bull market could be seen everywhere. Beyond the mounting hype around the pending Bitcoin ETF approvals, there was actually an even bigger narrative that was forming around the currency. And this was the Bitcoin halving event, which was slated to take place in April of 2024. All this good news had seemingly overwhelmed the industry, literally dragging it up and out of the bear market. Going into 2024, it looked like things were turning around in a very big way. And big was what 2024 was all about, but it wasn't for the reasons that everyone was expecting. Because in crypto, truth is almost always stranger than fiction. And this is why that is the focus of the next episode in our series. So be sure to check out the story of crypto in 2024. I hope you enjoyed today's stroll down memory lane. Until next time, have fun and enjoy life, my friends. I'll be back soon with another incredible story to tell you.